Hello everyone, and welcome to This Week in Jump. My name is Axel Ablaze, and this is the first episode of a new video series where I'm going to be reviewing every series in Weekly Shonen Jump. Each week I'm going to be going over my top 10 with an honorary lightning round where we discuss the top chapter of each week. Let me know what your top 3 chapters of the week are in the comments down below, and I will reveal the collective results in next week's episode. With explanations out of the way, let's jump into it. We're covering Shonen Jump issue 49 for 2024. Elusive Samurai took the cover with the lead color pages, and additional color pages were given to Kagurabachi and Shinobi Undercover. So, we're starting off with number 10, and that is Mission Yozakura Family, Mission 249, Busted. The twins are on the run to save Tayo, and we get a constant, if X happens, we're okay. It's like, we get a constant, if X doesn't happen, then we're okay. Well, X just happened. Well, if Y doesn't happen, then we're okay. And then Y happens. And it's just a constant of the chapter as a whole. And of course, this means that the fight all of a sudden breaks into where they are running into. But conveniently for them, because of the clones and whatnot, the projections that Shion and Kengo had made, they're able to kind of sneak their way through. But of course, Shion and Kengo knew that this was going to happen, and so they were the two that immediately saw what they were doing and tried to stop them, which leads to them trying to get past them, and that means that they shout out to Asa, and all of a sudden the attention is on them. Everybody is just like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? And we get a sort of rematch between Infinity and Void, and the twins are able to overcome Asa's power with the power of Infinity, my least favorite blooming, but I digress. At this point, Futaba is the one that tries to get in front of them again, but Futaba is like, alright, if this is what you two believe is going to save your dad, then I'm going to finally let you go through. I'm going to trust you. You go do what you need to finish. And I appreciate that they're giving them that trust in that moment. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have never been a fan of the twins. I will never be a fan of the twins. But I do appreciate that they are finally getting their moment to shine and hopefully do something to kind of stop this gridlock that we've got going on between Asa and the Yozakura family. Time will tell what happens, but I am looking forward to things starting to wrap up. With that being said, we move on to number 9, Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi, Chapter 19, Sakaki versus Yuta. So we are getting the Sakaki smackdown here as he is just beating up Yuta left and right. This is also the first of several mentor-focused chapters this week, and I am grateful for it because all 3 of the ones that we got featured in this week were fantastic. So we get Sakaki showing off fighting abilities similar to that of Kite from Hunter x Hunter, and he starts out with an umbrella. Not the most conventional weapon, obviously, but it does the job as he's able to fight off Yuta, who is throwing around these kind of shadow spears that are just appearing out of these voids out of nowhere. Yuta is using any and every hostage that he can get his hands on, including a little girl, but Sakaki is able to just save every single one of them, like one after the other. And I did laugh when he handed the 2 coupons to the little girl, because if you zoom in and you look closely, it says that they're 2 500 yen discount coupons. So he's literally giving her $5 off coupons. It's not even like a free meal or anything, so definitely a cheapskate move. And the little girl is even like, I don't want these, and I don't blame her in that moment. Then we get the reveal of Yuta's arm, And, like, I'm immediately thinking, like, all right, okay, is this an Astro Royale copycat? Is this a Black Clover copycat? Is this a Bleach copycat because of the keyhole hole that he has in his chest? Overall, I do love the design. I love the skull on the fist. I love the keyhole on the chest. It's just a lot of things that we've seen previously in other character designs. At this point, when he does this reveal, the shadow spears all of a sudden turn into tridents, but he's still not really able to push Sakaki hard enough. He does lose the umbrella, but he's able to re-roll for another weapon. And I wrote down the specific name of it is the 456 Instant Win Death Slayer Blade. That's a name. That is the name right there. It's weird. It's funny. It's so overkill as a name, but it gets the job done by just cleanly slicing off Yuta's demon arm thing that he's got going on. But then he's just like, you might be stopping me here, but you're not stopping my plan. As we go back to the school rooftop where the occult club has succeeded in summoning a demon, but go figure that it is the great demon lord, the top guy. He's got this giant floating crown, he's got a cape, he's got a long sword. It's a really cool display, even though we're not seeing a lot of like features for him. But when you reveal the final boss, that's not always a good thing. Like, you have situations like Demon Slayer where you get Muzan revealed very early in the manga, but obviously Demon Slayer then goes on for 200 chapters. But then you have other manga, typically the axed ones, where they reveal the final villain and then the manga ends within 10 chapters. So it's not looking good for Kiyoshi, despite, the other things that's going on. It's getting promoted in Jump Festa. Next week it's getting a color page. But Shoseki has not been kind to it. So, day 1 of Shoseki, 28. Not great, but, depending on what the dip is, it might be okay. Second day was 96. Alright, not looking good. And then day 3 was 121. So I'm gonna be honest, it is not looking good, Kiyoshi bros. The sales numbers are not looking good. I am expecting around 5,000-ish. It might be more than that. It could even be a little bit less. I don't know. We don't know, what kind of stock Kiyoshi had for the volumes that were out. I don't know if we'll get word of a reprint or not. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm not looking forward to seeing what the numbers are when they get revealed in a couple days here. So just be forewarned that while there's some good promotion going on for it, the sales are king and not looking great. But again, great chapter for the week. I really enjoyed it. So let's see what happens in the following one when we face off against the Demon King. So moving on, we've got number 8 on my list for the week. We've got Undead Unluck. Number 229, Return. So Billy and Tella are pulling off a masterclass as they are fighting War, the Master Rule. We also get the hardest look that we've seen on Tella's face in this loop. Like, we've had a lot of like soft boy Tella kind of looks, and like he's been a happier guy, again, despite losing his voice and whatnot because of his negator ability. But like he just looks so serious as he's looking down at War. And it's interesting because again, like they seemingly have this fight on lock compared to everybody else that has been fighting so far. So these two are seemingly good, again, despite the fact that they are already fighting stage 3 of War. It's also interesting that they say that, War has rules too, to the literal rule of War. And it is true, like, the human rules compared to the master rule of War, it's interesting to see the differences there. there's a panel where they say, people risk their lives for the sake of others, and we specifically get shown Yusai, Feng, Gina, and Rip, and you know, 3 of them make sense. You know, like, we have seen backstories and or current loop efforts for 3 out of the 4 of them, but nothing really for Yusai yet. Like, I get it. She is single-handedly fighting justice right now. But otherwise, it's not like she's necessarily fought for any one specific person or whatnot. So it's interesting that she's included here, and I get in the context of what's going on fight-wise, but like, otherwise, in terms of the meaning, it's not the same as the other 3. And then we also get to see Andy let himself get literally cleaved in half by Death's scythe on purpose, leading to what happens later on. All the while, Soul is absolutely just molly-whopping the roundtable members as they are defending Juiz. They are literally like beat up on the floor, in the walls. They are getting pummeled, but Juiz is standing strong. She is fighting off, despite the fact that she still has not unlocked Injustice, at least not yet. But something interesting of note that Soul mentions is that he's detecting that there's a strand, some kind of soul that is giving her power. It's not her soul, but there's another soul that is seemingly there. And then Shen and Mui come flying down from above. They toss half of Andy's head down to Julia, which I realize I've been saying Juiz up to this point, but it is Julia. And it's interesting that it's not the half of his head that used to have Remember in it. Like, I think that's an interesting detail, that it's not that specific part of his head, it is the opposite half. Soul is like, oh no you don't, but then Ichiko literally traps him with a soul chain, and I'm like, Ichiko on sleep is literally soul chaining Soul right now and keeping him in place. Like, she is MVPing that shit right there. Like, oh my god. And because she's given that moment, Julia is able to just stab Andy's head while she's calling out for Victor, as more of Andy's body is starting to regenerate. So, will we get to see Victor here? Will Victor actually, come out of Andy's body? Will she, just kind of get like a moment, like an illusory soul kind of moment where they're talking to each other? I'm curious to see what happens. Obviously, I know Fuko wants everybody to be happy in this loop, and that does include Victor. So will we be able to see Andy and Victor coexist now that we have a better grasp of souls? Like, because there's Andy's soul and there's Victor's soul, will we be able to see them both exist at the same time? I am hoping so. I really am. I want everybody to be happy as a result of the end of this loop, but we'll see what happens. But everything is ramping up. I wish we had more focus on individual fights, but I know that everything is happening at the same time. I know that we can't all of a sudden just have one person win, and then immediately go to the other person and wait however many chapters. I get that we're happening in real time, but it would be nice to focus on one thing, but it is okay that we're bouncing back and forth, because I get that we're in real time. But things are heating up. I'm very excited to see where things go from here. Overall, really great chapter. Past that, we have number 7 on the list, Kill Blue, page 76, Fuwa-cure Fiction. So the Shin torture continues. He got the wrong lap pillow, and then he didn't get to eat Norin's ramen. Granted, it wasn't Norin that was making the ramen, but this boy is going through it. And, he was Mr. MVP of the last fight. Like, it's because of him that they won. I am not, like, shortchanging him on that, and he just cannot get a break. But it is interesting that, we don't really know where Shin's loyalties lie at this point. He says, he belongs to the Home Ec Club and that he's really fighting for them. He's a member of them. But will he put them over Yugang, who, employs him? We haven't had that moment yet where he's had to pick one over the other, so I'm very curious to see what happens when he is forced to in that situation. We also have a really funny JJK reference here, where he asks, Shin asks, "Don't you have a human heart?" Where in Jujutsu Kaisen, that was originally asked by Naoya to Maki, in which she responds, "No, it was taken from me." So we had an ironic use of that in Jujutsu Kaisen to a literal use of that in Kill Blue, and I did think it was funny that we got that nod thrown in there for that. Past that, we find out that the girls are kind of reminiscing in the home ec club room, as one of them has brought the DVD for Fuwa-Cure, which is Kill Blue's version of Pretty Cure, or Precure as it's shortened in Japan. Kill Blue's girls are, the ones for Fuwa-Cure are modeled after actually the original duo from the first Pretty Cure series, just with their hair colors swapped. It is celebrating a 15-year anniversary in Kill Blue, while the actual real-life Precure is actually celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. And Wonderful Pretty Cure is the current series in Japan, and it is the 21st Precure series. I admittedly did a lot of research into this part of it, a lot of information on Wikipedia. So, for those that are kind of unfamiliar with Pretty Cure, it is the animated magical version of like Super Sentai or Kamen Rider, or Power Rangers, for those familiar with the English version of Super Sentai, and it's part of the same Sunday morning entertainment block on TV for kids. Depending on what point in history you were watching it, if you were in Japan watching it, it was either before Super Sentai and Kamen Rider or after the two of them. So it is also funny to me as they're discussing that Ogami accidentally let it slip that his daughter used to watch it. Like, blatantly, he's just standing there and just like, "Oh yeah, my daughter used to watch this," and everybody's just like, "What did you say?" And he's like, "Oh, it's my niece that watched it." And it's just like, niece, daughter, like, those are not the two same things that you just said there. But again, it was hilarious to me that he let that slip, of all things, to Pretty Cure. So he goes home and he finds out that the DVD is accidentally in his bag. And he also has a discussion and finds out that DVDs have become obsolete. Goes to show that he has really not been paying attention to pop culture or anything as he's gotten older. So that is a funny moment there. And we find out then that he binges the entire series overnight. And honestly, that is one of the most relatable moments in Kill Blue up to this point in the series. Like, if you haven't had one of those moments where you have just straight up binged a series or something in one night because you can't stop, have you really lived yet? Have you lived if you haven't had that moment where you binge something in its entirety? So again, incredibly relatable. He also says that he gets hyped up in like the final episode when the theme song plays as they're having the final fight, and I get that. I love it. It is one hell of a trope, but I love when they play the theme song during any kind of fight. It immediately hypes me up. It is so much fun. I love it. There are moments that I remember from shows. I don't remember most of the rest of the show, but I specifically remember those moments where they played the theme song in the fight, and I love it as I smack my hand against the desk. He becomes the biggest fan of Fuwa-Cure. He starts watching everything. He gets merchandise of everything. He specifically gets merchandise of the first series more than anything else, and he gets called out on it. And then go figure, there's a movie announcement called Mommy Fuwa-Cure, where it is essentially the 15th anniversary of the original series, and the magical girls from that original series are now moms. They've transitioned from girls to women, from women to moms, and so he is really excited to go out and watch this, which, translating that back to real life, recently had a movie called Pretty Cure All Stars F that had all 78 Pre-Cure girls up to that point, including the 20th series girls. So it did include Wonderful Pretty Cure, but it included everybody up to that point. So it's reminiscent of that. It also reminds me on the Super Sentai side of things with Superhero Taisen and or the Super Sentai anniversary special series that they have, like the 10 years later, the 20 years later, where they take the characters from a Super Sentai show and they make a special for them 10 or more years after the original series ended. So very reminiscent of that with this special, and he absolutely wants to go see this movie, but then he comes out of it like super shocked. His world is kind of broken, just because of how realistic the movie was. He's wanted them to stay idealistic, and it's messing with him that these girls that like he became a fanatic for, all of a sudden they're just facing real life problems. And again, I can relate with that, just being somebody that's had to grow up, and I still have my inner child moments, but then you deal with things like bills, you deal with relationships, you deal with all kinds of things. So I get that, and he is just he's having this crisis all over again. And he's sitting in this restaurant. There's these two bad guys that come in and they try to wreak havoc, and he just single-handedly stops them. And he brings up the Bible at one point, and he's just like, yeah, I don't really read the Bible and whatnot, but you know what I do know? I know Fuakure. And he immediately starts quoting the series, and the guys are just like, why are you quoting an anime? And they walk out of the restaurant, and he's like, and he asks, and I'm blanking on the name of his operator, the guy that's the man in the chair, and he's like, you want to go home and you want to watch Fuakure with me? And he's like, no, I do not want to do that. And I'm very curious to see if Fuakure comes up again at any point in the rest of the manga. Any of his obsessions that Ogami has had have typically popped up once or twice or more later on in the series, so I'm very curious to see what we get to see more of here. But this chapter, and the reason why it's as high as up on this list compared to other series, is just because it's relatable as a Power Rangers / Super Sentai / Kamen Rider fan. The Pre-Cure series, like I said, has been going on for 20 years. So there are 20 years of history for this Magical Girl series. Now, it's not as much as Kamen Rider or Super Sentai. Kamen Rider is approaching its 55th anniversary, Super Sentai is approaching its 50th. But 20 years is like, nothing to shake, nothing to, I don't know the phrase there, nothing to shake your head at. Something similar to that. So it's a big deal. I related to this chapter a lot. It was a fun note. And it's nice to have that little bit of transition from the serious battles to the school life and things like that, back to another battle. Past that, so we get to number 6 on my list, Hunter x Hunter, number 405, Performance. Another very information-dense chapter of Hunter x Hunter. There was a lot of stuff that I had to go back to previous chapters to kind of look at. So we get the return of Hisoka. We get the real one this time, because we find out that the one that we've been seeing has actually been a fake. He wasn't turned on by the Chimera ants because they were ants. That is the reason why he didn't fight. Now, I'm very curious to know how he would have actually reacted to Meruem and the 3 royal guards, though. Like, would that have excited them, or because they were biologically still part Chimera ant, would he not have? I'm very curious. Like, at any point in time, would he have actually been excited? Especially just given the sheer power that Meruem had. And at this point now he's upset that the ship is being affected by a group ability, and he's wandering a bit aimlessly through the casino at this point. He wants to be with the one person that he can love to death. He wants a one-on-one relationship with this, like, a person. He doesn't want any groups. He doesn't want, like, animals, group tactics, anything like that. But he said at least for now they're solitaire, and I can relate to that as somebody that does enjoy the random game of solitaire every once in a while. We find out that the one that was disguised as Hisoka in previous chapters was Bonolanov. He was disguised as Hisoka with his Nen technique, and he was the first one to spot Hisoka. So Chrollo is trying to be careful and calculating. They can't really do anything big, flashy, because of the very tenuous balance on this ship right now with the mafia families and whatnot. So he's trying to have everybody be careful. He wants Bonolanov to be undercover and alert him when he finds Hisoka, but Bonolanov and everyone else from the troop wants to kill Hisoka before Chrollo. Despite this, Chrollo is apparently searching for a Nen ability to kill Hisoka for good. So very curious to know who he is specifically searching for, because he's not the only one searching for someone in this chapter. He's not the only one searching for somebody in general. Like, everybody is searching for somebody seemingly in these chapters recently for Hunter x Hunter. So it's just once again interweaving this web of this, a lot going on. I love it. I do. It's just a lot of information all at one time. So, past that, we see that the televisions on the ship are not promoting, but they're showing off that it's the 10th anniversary of Mr. Risnorth's murder. This was the guy that was responsible for the charity that Chrollo and the rest of the spiders were originally part of. We never did get to see how he died during the troop flashback, where we had a couple chapters back during the previous stretch of chapters from Hunter x Hunter. So I'm very curious to know how they eventually killed him. I know it had to be something brutal. They said in the news report that he had a brutal death. So I really want to see it. I want to see that retribution. I don't know that we will ever get to see it, but I am happy to know that he did die a very brutal murder for the things that he committed. So the troop trio is discussing with Char, and they're discussing that Haile's tactics are very similar to that of the troop, with their directions from above, yet they're able to act kind of independently. They're able to deduce that Haile's guards are trying to destroy everything. They're powering up by killing indiscriminately, which one of the representatives from Char says it's crazy, but so are the troop members for even thinking that up in the first place. We also see that Mr. Wang, at least if that is his name, there are several guys that kind of look the same, but Mr. Wang is actually working for Morena instead of either of the two other families, so I'm very curious to see what the connection is there. And Morena, who is the head of the Haile family, she wants to use Dogman, the guy with the dog-like face, to find a specific Nen user. So again, everybody is searching for somebody, but we don't know who it is. And interestingly enough, from the last time that we saw him, he was level 36, and at this point he is up to 62. So this guy has really had his ability boosted. And in general, we get to continue to see Morena's contagion group leveling up by killing different people. So we have a lot of people that are getting very strong with their Nen abilities. All of them getting up to 51 or higher, and people keep ticking up. The higher that they get, every 10 levels and whatnot, their abilities are getting stronger. So these guys are getting very, very dangerous. We are reaching a boiling point, and I'm very excited to see where we go with it. What kind of confrontation are we going to see? Because the last time that the troop tried to, take down these guys, they were forcibly extracted. So I know we're going to get some kind of big fight eventually. I'm very excited for when we do, but for now it is another information dump chapter as we are exploring more and finally getting Hisoka himself back in the manga. At least kind of, since he's, like I said, he's not very interested in what's going on right now, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. Ooh. lot of talking. Need to rehydrate. So, we are now in the top 5. And we start off the top 5 with number 5, Sakamoto Days, Days 188, Here and Now. Sakamoto has been fighting Torres, and he has lost 5 times at this point. The guy who has been winning fight after fight is losing 5 in a row. Like, we've seen Sakamoto maybe lose once and then bounce back, or, you know, he's had an inconclusive fight and he's bounced back. But for him to lose 5 times is a big deal. Like, Torres is no joke, despite how jokey this chapter becomes. He says to Sakamoto that he doesn't fear him. He doesn't feel fear when they're fighting, and that Sakamoto's use of his fists and random objects just is not helping his case. He's also alluding to the fact that maybe we will finally see Sakamoto getting a personalized weapon. There are a few times in the chapter where we see flashes of other people and the signature weapons that they use. Sakamoto doesn't have one, so I'm very curious to see if we do get something like that in the near future. While they are walking through the streets, they run into Sakamoto's wife, Aoi, and she actually invites Torres to dinner. The guy that is trying to kill Sakamoto is invited to dinner, and he is just sitting there losing his mind. This man who is just like has had no opinion, he has had no fear of Sakamoto. He is sitting there and he is losing his mind as he's watching Aoi cook and her effortless multitasking. He freaks out when Hana makes a paper airplane. He's just like, how did you do that? How did you make a paper airplane? Like, I'm used to like regular metal planes, but a paper airplane, what the hell? No way. And then when Sakamoto himself goes up to finish cooking, he's just like, oh my god, like, what's gonna happen if he uses that on me? And like, I'm sitting there in that moment and I'm like, okay, so is he specifically talking about the multitasking? Is he talking about the cooking, the use of the wok? Like, what specifically is he freaking out about with Sakamoto? And just in general, why is he freaking out so much over a paper airplane and the cooking? Granted, Aoi's cooking is super fast. She's doing however many things at the same time. But this trained assassin that has beat Sakamoto 5 times is losing his mind over her. That is crazy to me, but entertaining nonetheless. Like, it is such a funny dinner. I'm very curious to know if he actually did eat with them. I think he did. I think they finally did get to eat the meal, and he went home and it's just like, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing that already? Like, what? Why? But I digress. We go back to the prison. Shin and Heisuke are still trying to fool Tenkyu. And Shin has to pretend that he has, you know, that clairvoyance. So he rigs this, you know, little accident to happen to Tenkyu, and he's like, wow, I guess you're right. You really can see the future. And so he reveals, because, you know, he's having these problems, and he's having these problems with Uzuki, Slur, X, and he's just like, man, you know, the argument that we had was because I wanted to kill Mr. Sakamoto's wife and his daughter. And Shin loses it. He's just like, nope, plan is a bust. We have to kill this man now. I don't care if we are breaking the Sakamoto family rules. This man needs to die. I cannot let him get to Mr. Sakamoto's family. And Shin is a real one for that. Now, I am curious. When he says that Izuki got mad, that X got mad, that Slur got mad, which one of the personalities was it that got mad at him specifically? Was it the Rion personality that took over and got mad at him since she was the one that put out the bounty? Or was it Uzuki himself? Like, who was it that got mad at him and they had this falling out? I'm very curious to know who it was that was in control of the body at that time, and if that has any impact on their friendship moving forward. But this man is dangerous. I don't want him anywhere near Sakamoto's family, and I'm very curious to see what happens in the following chapter. But overall, really funny to start and then very serious to end. And I mean, that's Sakamoto in a nutshell. Really great chapter overall. After Sakamoto, number 4 on the list is Elusive Samurai, chapter 179, Shinano 1338 to 1340. So, we get that opening color page. It is great. We get different maid outfits for the girls, though it gets very spicy as well with Shina's outfit. But again, great colors overall. I always love when we get that future look compared to the period that they're actually in. At this point, Mima is apparently feeling better at this point, and she is taking a lot of pleasure in sending her father all these graphic letters detailing her falling into depravity when she's really not. She's not. But the visuals that we get of him just absolutely freaking out, it's hilarious. And he's freaking out, but despite this, we get some insight into his history and the human side of him as dictated by the historical records of the time. The stuff that we are actually using, to reference Elusive Samurai and the actual history going on. We get group hot spring time, where the legal wife and the housemaids fight, and that's pretty funny, but in general, it's funny that literally all of them are just sitting in these salt baths together, which we get more history on that side of things as well with the history of the salt baths. We see that in 1939, so we skip forward a year, that Inoya falls and Prince Muneyoshi had to flee, so they are going back over to Tokiyuki. And at this point, we also see the reason for why Ogasawara Sadamune, why his actions were revealed. So because he saved Suwa, he has made them agree that Suwa will not fight for 5 years. So because of that, that means that the 3 generals that we had in the first part of the manga can no longer come to Tokiyuki's aid. So some of the biggest allies that he had throughout the series, their hands are tied because they can't go back on the deal that was made. But despite all this, despite their history, Sadamune respected Yorishige, and his grandson is able to see that in Sadamune's eyes when they talk together. And as we then go over to Sadamune, we see the tiredness and age in this man. He is tired. He even says it himself, like he's this old governor. But he literally jumps to his feet when he finds out that Tokiyuki is here. So this man, like that grudge against this child is so strong that he's just like, all right, this is it. Like this is the final fight between us. This is the moment. And Tokiyuki gets to reflect on how Sadamune is kind of his third father figure in a way. So obviously he had his birth father that was killed. We had Yorishige, who was his adoptive father, that was also killed. And Sadamune has reflected this father figure that he's learned from specifically on the battlefield. So it's going to be interesting that with this is the final fight between these two, that he gets to say goodbye to his third father figure. It's also interesting to note that at this point we've had a 2-year time skip in this chapter. We've gone from 1338 to 1340. I have not read any of the history. I have not looked really into things to know what kind of timeline that we have left, but it is significant that they literally jumped forward 2 years. I'm also curious at this point, because 2 years have passed, did anything happen between Tokiyuki and Mima? Did he actually have a child at this point? I don't know. I'm very curious to see what happens once the fight ends. But this is a big fight, because again, these guys have had such a history fighting each other over time. I'm very excited to see how things wrap up. But Elusive Samurai, absolutely fantastic chapter this week. Hey everybody, post-production Axel here. So somehow I managed to completely forget Ichi the Witch in the script here. I have no idea how that happened, but if I had to put it somewhere, I'd probably say around 4th or 5th favorite of the week. The chapter starts out in such a hilarious way, with Komugi and Discaris attempting the Hisami Magic's trial. Komugi tries her best, but those words are daggers in the girl. Discaris, meanwhile, has the laziest attempt trying to talk about beauty on the inside. The conceit here is strong, and the Hisami magic shuts her down immediately. We get a little montage of more attempts, and the poor girls are pooped. Ichi is allowed one more attempt, but if he fails, he and Discaris are getting turned into ice furniture. Poor Komugi is spared? Yay! But Ichi has a plan and a devious smile. I love the outfits Discaris and Komugi wear as Ichi goes in for the kill, or at least that's how it's presented, but the boy is serving Hisami magic up sashimi style. It's definitely not what I expected him to do based on the fashion approach, but I'm glad he's doing things his way. Great chapter overall with a lot of funny moments. Now back to the original video. For number 3, we have Ruri Dragon, chapter 24, Kinda Gross. Yes, I am including Ruri Dragon in these because Ruri Dragon is part of the digital Shonen Jump, as it's been told. So, as far as I'm concerned, it absolutely counts. So, Ruri is making good on making things out and seeing eye to eye with one of the two girls that called her horns gross several chapters ago. So, she tells the girl, like, hey, we need to chat, and, like, they go off to lunch together, and it's just, like, you know, it's kind of pretext. Like, I didn't actually have anything to talk about, but, you know, I wanted to talk about things. And she starts by apologizing for the revenge that she plotted against Kamada, the girl that, you know, she pulls over to lunch, the one that she made break off the other horn that she had. And Kamada apologizes in turn for the projecting that she had. Like, she knows that people, you know, talk behind her back, and so she's done that herself. And it's a real life lesson there. There are a lot of people that will project the issues that they experience on other people, and it can be an absolutely vicious cycle. So I'm really glad that Ruri is stepping in there to have these real conversations with people. The forbidden bestiality gets brought up in this chapter. It's just like, please, I don't want to think about it. Like, I know that my mom and my dragon dad did something and I've been conceived. I don't want to think about it. As much as we, the readers, are curious how it happened, it's just funny for it to get brought up. And then it becomes show and tell time, where Kamada says, you know, you're not so much gross at this point as much as you are scary, because there are things that I don't understand about you. And Ruri's like, bet, all right, I'm gonna show you literally everything I can do, starting with her, you know, flame breath, her dragon fire. We then cut away to her class busting out the new t-shirts that they have, and they look like Ruri's venom splashed on the shirts. Irie goes out and she's gonna go bring the shirt to Maeda, and she finds out that all of the committee members at this point are wearing cardboard headbands with fake Ruri horns, and she gets incredibly jealous really fast. And Maeda is just like, oh no, these are specific for the committee, like they're exclusive, like you can't have one. And it's really endearing to see that the committee has come together in support of Ruri as much as they have, and are, you know, using the horns as a symbol of their unity in this moment. Ruri herself then has a moment with the two girls that were talking behind her back, Kamada and the blonde one, where everyone is gross together. They smile, they laugh. We get last minute prep for the big event. The guys on the boulder that were like sprawled out, that really made me laugh. And I love the dragon art that we have at the end of the chapter. These kids are gonna have so much fun together. I'm excited to see the end of this, and just Ruri's growth through this school sports day arc has been so great to see, and I'm excited to see how it ends. That being said, Ruri is unfortunately off for a month and will be back in December. So despite the long continuation of every other week chapters that we've had, it's time for another break. I am all for it. The mangaka, take the time that you need, come back strong. I hope you feel better soon. Take the time that you need and keep Ruri going, because the support that the series has been getting has been great. The sales are fantastic. Ruri is still as big of a success as when it started, and I'm so glad that we get to continue reading Ruri Dragon. So I'm happy to wait the month and get new content again in come December. Past that, we go to my silver medal for this week. Number 2 is Akane-banashi, stage 133, There's Always Tomorrow. So this is the backstory of Shiguma and Isho continued. These men are very much the same as they were back in their youth. If nothing else, a little bit more extreme in some cases, just because of the youthfulness that they have. It's interesting to see that Isho was taken in by a soba shop couple, but sadly the husband passed away. We don't know what he died from. Was it illness? Was it age? I mean, it wasn't age. Like, he looked young enough from the few panels that we had, but how did we die? How do we have it where it's still the widow and now Isho running this ramen shop, and he's accosting this bum guy in the shop, and you know who it is. You know who the bum in the shop is, but I digress. There's an interesting line here where the woman says that Isho is acting on emotion. He's acting on obligation. He's acting on comfort. He's acting on sympathy. These are all parallels to the current day. They're all parallels. So the fact that, like, he's getting called out for it back when he's young, and now the same thing is happening in the present day. Again, the parallels are absolutely fantastic. We find out that he ran away from home. He ran away from his father in a successful business, and he wanted to make a name for himself. But soba is not where he's going to get the name for himself. That's not, his eyes do not light up about soba. I know that it does, ramen, at least for Norin, Kill Blue, Isho does not want to run a soba shop. So he goes outside, and eventually he sees the Yakuza boss outside, who is specifically the father of the long-haired guy that they beat up in the last chapter. And this guy just starts pounding on Isho. We found out that he also beat up on Shiguma as well. So these two are just beat up on the streets. And in comes Captain Rakugo, the man that even this Yakuza man respects. He is sitting there, he's eating the cold noodles, and the Yakuza's son is just like, "What are you doing, man?" And then the Yakuza dad beats his son in the face, and he's just like, this is the one man that I will not allow you to disrespect, because this man saved my life. And it begs the question, how did he save his life? You know, was it an actual Yakuza related thing? Was his life saved because of the Rakugo that he, like, watched? We get mention of, I think it was like Rabutal, or that was something along that name. That's where, I'm assuming that's where, well, that was the last time that they saw each other, and I'm assuming that's where he was quote unquote saved, but I'm assuming we'll get some kind of explanation for the future. But this is our first look and Master Kiroku Kashiwaya. And it's so interesting because you see that personality that he has translated to Shigema in the current day. You don't see that in Isho. You don't. So it's very interesting. I'm so curious to see how things develop through the next several chapters, because this backstory is so revealing. It's so interesting to see how they came up from their, uneducated lives up to this point. I'm so curious to see how things develop and whatnot, and Akane is doing so good. This absolutely would have been the chapter of the week for me if it wasn't for one other series, but we're not doing number one yet, because if you remember at the beginning of the video, I said that once we get through 10 through 2, we are going to do a lightning round of the series that did not quite make the top 10 this week. So buckle up, we are going to go through it. So starting at the bottom, we've got Roboco Chapter 208, Publicity and Roboco. So not a lot to talk about here. Roboco stars in a promo video for the town of Bermuda. It turns into a Super Saiyan invasion parody. Some good laughs, but it's honestly nothing that we haven't seen before. Yokai Buster Murakami, Chapter 20, Sanmoto Gorozaimon. So the king of the yokai, he takes on his true form, and he's trying to recruit Murakami. Murakami instead calls him out for being a character that pops up out of nowhere with literally no backstory, and it's such great meta commentary despite the series clearly heading toward the axe, and fast at that. Hakutako after that, Chapter 7, Little Sister Encounter. I can't believe they did it, but the programmer's brother, who also liked video games, was killed by video games. Not really, but it definitely feels like it. Also, there's an old Karen at the playground that hates kids and balls. Let's see how fast these two conflicts resolve. I give it a chapter and a half at max. We'll see. Astro Royale, Chapter 28, Tarasu vs. So. Pretty sad and ironic death. I at least think it's death in this chapter. So Tarasu is literally standing there with a shield as So kills herself by overdosing on the artificial Astro pills, all because she wanted to do something for Himuro, who saved her from her drug-dealing father. Was there ever any goodness in his heart, or was he always a scumbag? A few more chapters and we should have the answer, but next chapter we have Hibaru versus drug-enhanced Himuro. Let's see what happens. Shinobi Undercover, Chapter 8, The Two After School. Cute color page, but also incredibly average in design. The love triangle deepens, if you even want to call it a triangle at this point. Fugitive Ninja Okarun, as I'm calling him based on the old picture of what he looked like, is working with another fugitive ninja known as the Crested Honey Buzzard, which is a real animal, by the way. I'm curious to see how that translates to his techniques in the manga, especially when he destroyed an entire tree by seemingly just swinging his arm. Aoi and Nozuki also have a very cute friendship at the end, though. I'm very concerned that Shinobi's not doing enough, but we'll see what happens. Could be easy axe bait along with Hakutaku. That's what I'm thinking, unless it really pulls something out of its hat. After that, we have Blue Box, number 171, Are You Over Him? I am still sad that Kyo is heartbroken, but I appreciate that Taiki and Chono are doing their best to cheer him up. Kyo raises the question of whether or not Chono is over Taiki now, and she says yes, but I personally think that she still needs to just let out all of her remaining thoughts. Either way, I have lots of ships to ship, but there is no time to do that because the last girls' basketball tournament is on the horizon. Will Chinatsu finally win, or does the author hate anything that isn't her love life? Only time will tell. Past that, we have Super Psychic Policeman Chojo, number 37, the Outbreak Senior Police Officer. So, Inukai has apparently been infected by a bioweapon and has become Inukai Omega. a name that gets repeated several times in this manga chapter. So the people in town are similarly getting infected and are all after Chojo, turning this chapter into kind of zombie-themed chapter. It has everything from Mr. Guy appearance to Copbot's betrayal and eventual rescue, a rare Hyuji appearance, and oh god, what did they do to Ban? Fun chapter overall, with the bonus random desert sandworm rocket launcher moment. That was a lot of random words strung together, and that's exactly what it was. It was a very random moment. It was very funny, but random nonetheless. But I mean, you know, that's gag series for you. After that, we have hima-ten, number 17, Kana's Unpacking. So, Iamori goes over to help Kana unpack her new apartment. The big secret is revealed as to why she's attracted to him in the first place, and it's because he reminds her of the butlers in the shoujo manga that she reads. Good taste. She sends him home with a few copies of her favorites to read, and we also see her admit to liking how he also acts kind even to the girls that he doesn't have feelings for. I feel sad about this because I genuinely like Kana the most out of the 3 girls so far, but I know how these kinds of shonen harems go. And bad news on the Shoseki front as well. Day 1 had hima-ten at 25, Day 2 was 76, and Day 3 was 124. So similar yikes to that of Kiyoshi here. Last but not least, we have Nue's Exorcist, Chapter 73, Resolve. Just missing out on the top 10 is Nue. Gakuro goes to talk to Vice Captain Rikudu, Vice Captain Rito's ex, and comes back just in time to try and stop her. Try and stop him per her wishes. We get to see Rito's hollow weapon in action as the two duke it out over Fujino, and Rito has the edge, but Gakuro keeps fighting when he's asked whether or not. Gakuro keeps fighting when he's asked whether or not he has a resolve to trample. Oh my god, I can't talk. Lightning round, what are you doing to me? When he has the resolve to trample over Rito's conviction to save Fujino, is she worth it? And to Gakuro, she obviously is. Will this lead to him picking Fujino? Will the ambiguous love harem continue? I'm honestly leaning toward the latter, but Gakuro and Fujino have a lot of history at this point. So, we'll see. Absolutely great chapter though. Like I said, just barely misses out of the top 10. So, with everything out of the way, what does that leave us with? It leaves us with number 1 for the week, Kagurabachi. That's right, Kagurabachi. I know I pronounced it wrong in the State of Shonen Jump video. I know I did. It's Kagurabachi, Chapter 56, Daybreak. So, this is Aura the chapter. I hate using the word Aura, but it's Aura the chapter. Great Hakari color page to start. I love the blue and the yellows, especially considering so often we just get the blacks and reds, so it's a great contrast. So immediately Hakari is just knocked out since he has not recovered enough. We get to see some of the history with the ninjas protecting and serving Mr. Samura. There's a lot of funny moments. The fact that they give him toilet paper when he needs it, like it's just suddenly there. He knows that they're doing these things for him. He knows that they're trying to make him comfortable and whatnot. They view themselves as tools. He sees them as people. You know what I mean, though, since he's blind. He can't literally see them, but you know what I mean. So, with all the chaos that is going on, Mr. Samura can only focus on bloodlust. So I love that Uruha, the other swordsman, uses this to his advantage to draw him into the teleportation circle and get them out of there. The teleportation circle that's been getting set up the entire chapter can only teleport 3 people. So it's obvious who those 3 are going to be, despite Mr. Samura's complaints, and he does not want to leave those ninjas behind because he's grown to care for them. So they're fighting as they're, teleported away from here, and Hakari, badass moment, number 1 in this chapter, he reaches up, he grabs Mr. Samura's arm, and he summons our 4th enchanted blade of the manga, Tobimune. In flocks the birds, and wow, we get a absolutely fantastic double page spread at the end that is reminiscent of Hakazono's previous one-shot. So it's pretty one for one for like the crows and the feathers and whatnot. I'm completely fine with it. If you're good at what you do and that's a scene that you are good doing, you bring it back. So absolutely fantastic. Chapter was so good. But I am extremely worried. I was already worried for Mr. Samura up to this point because there has been so much alluding to like something is going to happen. So one of these swordsmen is going to die, and I don't think it's Uruha. Like, he's too young. Like, there's so much that's going on for him. Mr. Samura so far has been such a badass despite being this blind swordsman. So I'm very worried for him, and honestly, this chapter solidified that. And the reason why I'm concerned is because his crow technique that he uses with the enchanted blade is very similar to the technique by, let's see here, looking at my notes. So it was very similar to the techniques by Hirohiku, who was the paper sorcerer from the Hishaku. Like, it's the paper and the crows, they're very similar, and if he's the one that inherits that enchanted blade, his technique goes away in favor of the enchanted blades. And honestly, for him, I can easily see the transition. Like, it was commented in the past that, like, you know, it's not necessarily that, like, his ability currently is great so much as how he was able to adapt it and grow stronger. There's a lot of build up for this guy. On top of that, there's still a trump card, according to Yura, that Hirohiku does not want used. Everything that has happened so far supposedly is not that trump card. So what is it? Who is it? What is going to happen still? Is it one of the other 10 sorcerers that will get the job done? Is there something that we don't know? I mean, Hakazono loves sacrificing characters, good and bad alike, to get things done. So I'm scared for what's going to happen. I know something is going to happen. It's just the vibe that I have, but only time will tell what's going to happen. But either way, absolutely fantastic chapter. Best one of the week, hands down. For me, it was easily number one. We'll see if it's able to repeat that next week. But with that being said, that wraps up this week's chapters. And overall, it was another really great week, even with One Piece and Witch Watch on break. So next week, we've got Akane on the cover. We've got color pages going to Chojo, Kiyoshi, and Kill Blue. But for now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on my ranking for this week? Do you agree with what I discussed, or do you have a different opinion? I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments below, and don't forget to leave your top 3 of the week so I can chart them up for next week's episode. For now, I'm Axel Ablaze, and that's all for This Week in Jump. Bye-bye.